All right, everybody, and welcome to the Space Weather Show. Now, it's been a while since we did one of these, so let me just briefly explain about space weather and cycling and business in general and YouTube. So, yes, took a long break from space weather, okay? It has to do with a lot of different things. Part of it is because of sustainability. Part of it is because of needing to avoid burnout. Okay, so never do something that you're burned out on forever, because it's just going to get worse. You got to take a break. All right, so that was part of it. It was also because I was training to go to the national championships for the road cycling time trial, and that had something to do with it. So anyway, that's the period of time about since we did the last video. The last video was all the way back on July 11th, if I remember correctly. So it's no longer going to be known as the Daily Space Weather Show. It's just known as the Space Weather Show now. And again, the break had to do with preparing for national championships. So now I didn't go. Maybe I'll get into that at a later time. We'll make a video specifically about cycling. But the point is, the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, is going to be covering literally anything. So be prepared for that. There were some business aspects as well to the reason why we took a break. But hey, we're back. So let's get to it, because there have certainly been some interesting developments, not the least of which was the largest solar flare of solar cycle 25, which occurred today, and we're already expecting major geomagnetic storms. Expect some even more extreme geomagnetic storms on the way. It could cause some effects on the ground level for sure. So let's get into it. Once again, thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. And yeah, so that's about the period of time since we did our last video. That is July 10th, actually, until today. So figured we'd put that up. And of course, part of the reason why we're putting out the video today is because of the X 9.05 class solar flare. It's pretty classy. And there it is. It occurred around 12:24 Universal Time today. Let's briefly show that here from the SDO Browse Data feature. Not half bad. And like I said, there is another coronal mass ejection on the way associated with this solar flare. So yeah, largest solar flare in over 7 years, since 2017. We have not had a flare of this magnitude. Like I said, there were CMEs. We'll get to that here in a moment. But let me talk about some other space weather stats. Now, like I said, several interesting things have happened since the last time we made a video. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux is all the way up to 275. And of course, it's already reached its highest so far in the cycle. Now, we've been calling for years and years for this solar cycle, solar maximum, to occur in this month. So October of 2024. I would expect it to be toward the end of the month at this point, but there you go. It looks like things are ramping up once again. We're expecting the sunspot number to be back up around 250 soon, as some large and magnetically complex sunspots have risen in the east. So we'll cover that here in a moment. Now, as far as NOAA's forecast, there you have it. NOAA forecasting a KP7. So when NOAA says there's going to be a G3 class geomagnetic storm, expect some fireworks, okay? Because NOAA tends to downplay forecasting because they want to reduce the amount of stress on infrastructure, the people who operate satellites and so forth. Now, ESA, looking like a little bit of a different plan here. Anyway, tomorrow night, so tomorrow night, Friday night into Saturday, is when we are expecting some excitement. Hopefully we'll get some mid-latitude aurora, and if we do, we'll share it on the channel. At the moment, the aurora forecast is pretty weak, but there is some space weather on the way. So let me just go through here. KP is currently only at 1.67. Nothing too exciting there. Solar wind is a little bit on the slow side at ACE and a little bit on the fast side at Discover. No, it's ramped back down, actually. So only about 400 kilometers per second here. Very nominal solar wind. Again, expect some fireworks coming soon. Now, quick update on coronal holes. Here's our coronal hole line of sight plot. And you can see there, while there is a lot of coronal hole area up at the north heliographic pole, which would be the top of your screen, as far as the south heliographic pole, those green areas, those are North Pole oriented coronal holes. They are not yet making their way down. So that's got something to do with why we're seeing more activity in the southern hemisphere than the northern hemisphere. But long story short, coronal holes have not made their way to the poles yet. So the closer they are to the equator, the more solar activity you can expect to see. That is just a normal thing. Again, sunspot number, we're expecting it to be back up around 250. It's currently at about 210. 210, 211 is the sunspot number. So as far as likelihood of solar flares, we still do have a very high likelihood of large solar flares, as there still is magnetic complexity associated, especially with sunspot 3842, a great example of why you don't need to see a large sunspot to see large flare activity. So here's that flare from today. Again, it was peak flux was around 1218 according to that, and it was an X 9.05 class solar flare. Let's take some more looks here. Here is the view from SDO 171 angstrom. So that's just today's data to date, October 3rd. And yeah, big flares make for big excitement when it comes to seeing the aurora at low latitudes. Low latitudes, mid latitudes especially. So yeah, exciting stuff. Here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Here's a close-up. That's 30 frames per second. Again, just today, October 3rd, 2024. What a day for space weather, as there's a major geomagnetic storm on the way, and another one expected in about 2 days and change. Just a little over 2 days, we can expect that latest coronal mass ejection to strike Earth's magnetosphere, sparking auroras, possibly even in equatorial regions. Fingers crossed for a good light show. If you do have any auroral imagery or videos to share, make sure you share it with us. And we're going to cut back to that here in a minute. First, a couple more space weather stats. That's the 131 angstroms wavelength. One of the two higher temporal resolution wavelengths that we use to view specifically solar flares. So yeah, what a day. What a day to come back. And let's cut back to some stats. So this is where things are located, and great, we've got a new moon. So new moon, perfect time for seeing the faint lights of the aurora. If you think you see the aurora, make sure you break out your camera, as most of the spectra emitted by the Earth's aurora is in ultraviolet. So your camera is able to see frequencies your naked eye is not. This is what is going on over our head right now. We're located in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, if you're wondering. There's our astronomy photo of the day, and here is some coronagraph imagery. So you can see quite a good halo there. There's a mixture of different densities coming out, but when you have a coronal mass ejection almost exactly in the Earth-facing longitudes, you can expect some of the ejecta to show up, and that is exactly what we're doing, expecting some ejecta to show up. Now let's just skip ahead here. We're going to show stereo A briefly, just the last few frames here, and there is that halo. You can see a slight halo there at stereo A. Now some of the ejecta is off to the east, but from stereo A's perspective, that is where it is located, right where that red dot is. So there you go, stereo A confirming that CME is highly earthly directed. Now before we get to filaments, let's cut back here to our spectacular views. Here we've got the 94 angstroms plus the 304 angstroms running difference. So ionized iron and helium here. And yeah, that's a pretty good money shot as well. Not too bad. And we've zoomed out with those same bands. And let's move on to our coronagraphs. Let it play through one more time. There you go. Oh, here's the raw 94 angstroms all by itself. And that was quite a zinger. That's one for the history books. So here are our custom coronagraphs. Here we've got the 304 angstroms along with the 193 angstroms, 60-minute running, 30-minute running difference. And you can see that halo eruption, an indication that a large portion of the ejecta is headed toward the aperture. That aperture being the LASCO C2 coronagraph. And we'll zoom out to show that from an even more larger field of view perspective. LASCO C3 there in blue as Mercury emerges from the C2 to the C3. Yeah, so space weather on the way. Good times indeed. All right, so as far as filaments go, we still do have large filaments on the Earth side of the solar disk. Some of that material blasted off in the northeast earlier today. That's the view from Cerro Tololo's Hydrogen Alpha telescope. And here's the black and white imagery. You'll see some prominences there. That is when plasma filaments are hanging off the edge of the solar disk. Here are the past couple of hours. Again, the solar flare risk remains very high. So don't be surprised to see more X-class events. And we're going to move into what we would call bonus features here. So let me cue some of that up. So first, some high-res imagery of the closest star here. There you go. There is the latest SDO continuum. Here is the sunspot that was the culprit for that X 9.05 class solar flare. And it still does have quite a bit of magnetic shear. So it remains a large solar flare player. As far as these new regions go, man, all of these sunspots are fairly complex. So that's what you want to see if you're wanting more space weather. And let's just go back through here once again. And once again, thanks folks for watching. Remember, if you're burned out on cycling or on anything else, maybe take a break, figure it out, and try to create a sustainable operation. So yeah, there you have it. Exciting stuff coming our way here on planet Earth. We'll close out with that view. The close-up in 131 angstroms. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And until next time, may that solar wind be at your back.